This episode is not suitable for young viewers. It contains paranormal and horror themes. So today's guest is the lovely Nicky. She predominantly works as a funeral director, but is so much more than that. Nicky, I love your holistic approach to death care and the before and after, and we'll get into that more soon. But I wanted to first start with a bit about your background.
Mm-hmm.
I know you grew up in India in a Christian household, but your childhood was far from normal from what I can gather. I know you grew up in a couple of haunted houses. Tell me from an Indian cultural perspective how people over in India view life after death and how they treat the paranormal. How do they differ from over here in Australia?
Firstly, thank you for having me and for that beautiful introduction. I was born in India in a Christian household, and I guess marrying the two in India, which is very strong in their traditions and their cultures and their many religions, would have been difficult for my family to navigate as well, right? But my grandfather, who was a doctor in the British Indian Army and a colonel, and I guess his desire for service, of being of service, is filtered through. His immense kindness and empathy for all nationalities and people in need was incredible. So he took in and did a lot of work, without being paid for the sick, the elderly, all of that. So how was it different? Far more open than here, right? So life and death in India was celebrated, right? As horrific as death is, we do believe in reincarnation.
Yeah.
So it's not the ending. It's just, the continuation. And that brings a lot of solace and hope, right? That it's not just the end.
So does that mean that funerals are generally less sad than...
Yeah, so you've got that mourning aspect because it's grief, right? You've loved and that person is no longer here. They're not a tangible thing, but there is the celebratory aspect of life, right? So there's a lot of colour and noise. It's like the weddings as well, right?
Right.
So we wear white, so it's not the black, right? Black is a very European thing, and black was something that was invented by the rich. So only the rich could really afford that colour because the dye to produce a dark colour cost a lot of money. So it was usually the greys and then finally the blacks. And, Westerners thought death was contagious. Nobody knew why you died. So the idea was to cover all aspects of your body, right? So the black veils, the black, so that you didn't catch death.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Right. So the black, that's where the black comes from. So
that's why mourning women wore veils.
Veils, well? And so you wouldn't see your you wouldn't see your skin, so you wouldn't catch it like a cold.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right? So that's where that comes from. But in India we wear white because it is about the soul and the afterlife and your aura and how your energetic body and freeing that to the afterlife.
What is that noise?
What is that noise? Is it like a mouse?
Someone's phone or something?
No.
It's not mine. Maybe there's someone joining us.
Yeah, I could do that too. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Okay. So, yes, there's that very sad aspect because that person is no longer tangibly here, but there's also this celebratory aspect, that they lived. They life was served a purpose within that time frame. We are born and we know when we're going to die. We have a soul contract, and so there's a lot of other belief.
So they all believe in that as well. Can you hear that? It sounds like someone's got the hiccups or behind Rob on your left.
Behind you, yeah. Okay. I don't know who's with us, but that's cool. If I'm lucky, it's Elvis. But anyway, that's another story. So we were brought up with all of that, right? And yes, we had our Christian funerals as well, which, you're not meant to cry, very British, you're not meant to cry and show emotion. And, it's quite different to what we were seeing
I'll bet.
in the Indian culture. Coming to Australia, which was incredible and such a courageous thing for my parents to do, leave everything that they knew behind. Even though we were schooled in British schools and things like that, it was still incredibly courageous to travel all the way here. And then try and assimilate into, the Aussie lifestyle and the language, and, it was very difficult. But growing up, it was also very hard for them to navigate. It's so different here. Everyone's even though we seem laid back, it's very British in the culture of funerals and how we mourn, and when we came in the 70s, wasn't quite as open and diverse as the profession is now, I guess, where we call it a celebration of life, right?
I think we've seen that. Very rigid previously, and now they've sort of opened their eyes to how it can be.
Correct, yeah. And I think that's because of all these amazing nationalities coming in and bringing their heritage and wanting to, celebrate the life instead of just mourn the life, right?
Yeah.
Collectively and grieve openly and not just quietly, internally and intimately by yourself. It can be quite a collective thing to go through. So that's lovely to see, and it's lovely to be part of that movement to change that. And to let people know it's okay that you're not okay. Right? And it's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh, and it's okay to remember. And it's okay to talk about your person when they're no longer here, because love doesn't stop. The life might have stopped, but the love doesn't. Right? So, to be shut down or to be told, "Oh, aren't you over that yet?"
It's the cruelest thing to do.
100%, 100%. And I think COVID taught us a lot about how important those rituals or having that contact at end of life really meant to us. Because we're so busy, we just. I'll go and see them, and, the hospital I'll go and do, later on, and and then suddenly that was all taken away. And I think in our DNA, that's like, hang on a minute, we're taught to say hello and we're taught to say goodbye.
And then when that's taken away from us, because that's when I was working in the funeral industry as well during that period. And so I remember the government put restrictions on how many people can attend a funeral. And that's why the funeral homes updated all their tech and started doing live streams for people. But I can't remember, what was the minimum attendance? Was it 4 guests?
We've had one. I was at a service, there was one. Maximum was 10, which was insane. I mean, you look back over that time period and it was just incredibly cruel. People couldn't go and see their loved ones, and which is all you want is to touch, right, and to be, and
also to have the shared grief with your friends and families that you're all going through the same thing. Like, to do that alone is just you're losing a basic human right.
100%. Yeah. And so now I'm a huge advocate of just spending time. People always say, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Mum's not well or dad's not well, and what do I do? And it's like, we're called human beings for a reason. I think I said this to you. And it's about being. We're not human doings, right? It's not about doing. It's about simply being and talking, holding hands, just, listening to those stories. The dying do want to talk. It might sound like gibberish, but it's important to their soul that they get whatever's here out.
So when you're being and you're just spending time with a person who's not got long left on this earth,
actively dying,
yeah. How do you? I know you're a big advocate of open conversations. How would you initiate that with somebody? How does that look?
So in my role as end-of-life doula, and that can change because it's all person-centered, on what they are. If I've got a history on that person and some idea of their personality or their likes and their, loves and passions, and that's where I would talk from that space. Because they are always the fond memories and people remember that and they say, yes, they haven't been asked that for such a long time.
Nice.
Right? It's like, what was it like when they went to school in the 1920s or the 1930s? What was life like? Did you, when you met your wife, was it love at first sight? When you met your husband, was it love at first sight, or was he just like a rat bag, And to watch that, even in their face, as they go back to that space, and
what a privilege!
Right?
That's just so beautiful.
And I look, even with my own mum who's living with dementia, taking her back to that space, it's such an honour, and it's a privilege. To just to be quiet and silent and just listen to that and just
beautiful.
Thank you. And people miss that. I mean, they miss out on that because they're busy.
Because they're living in the now.
That's right. What do I do? What do I do? Like I've got to go home and do, cook dinner, and there's all this anxiety. So before you go in and see someone that's not well, make sure you center yourself and leave all your baggage at the door. Take a minute, take a few breaths, just leave it, because your energy is really going to affect, as we know, we're energetic beings first, right? So any anxiety or nervousness or stress you're feeling, that's going to go straight to that person, because that's their energy body too, right? Their physical body is shutting down, but their energy body is still very much alive and well, and so, you want to enter that space feeling calm and peaceful and open, so that they can receive and you can receive, right? Whether there's any words said, it's irrelevant. It's just about holding hands. It's just, they know, hearing's the last thing that goes. So if your person is not aware or, conscious, is how we medically say it, they can well and truly hear every single thing. So whatever you say, be mindful of that. Be mindful, because that's going into their space, into their energy.
I remember when we said our final goodbyes of a very dear friend of ours that recently grew her angel wings, and she was unconscious for several days before she left. And when I went and said my final goodbye, I went over to her and I held her hand and I gave her a kiss, and I took a little angel-shaped crystal with me and put it in her hand, and I said, this is a gift. This is an angel. It's going to look after you, and it's going to help you on your journey. And I kid you not, like, she was asleep. She was out cold. She turned her head, still her eyes were closed, but she turned her head towards me, and like, she couldn't move, but after I finished talking to her and I went back to the other people in the room on the other side of the room, she kind of did this, like, she turned, like she was listening to the conversation. And like, you could tell she was still there, but
wow.
So,
and she would have heard that.
Exactly. So you're absolutely right that even if they're not, with it, they're still listening.
Look, and unfortunately, I've also had family members fighting over someone's, deathbed, and that's horrific.
It's the last thing you want.
Horrific, because there's this person inside that can hear all of that, and there's nothing that they can do about the situation. So, you know, I guess for me, I like to make the uncomfortable comfortable, and this is these conversations, and what you're doing here is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, and making it okay to talk about it.
Yep.
We plan everything else. We plan weddings, we plan birthdays, we plan holidays, we plan christenings, but no one wants to talk about the most significant and catastrophic thing that'll ever happen in their life and their family's lives is death, right?
Yep.
So having a space where you're making the uncomfortable comfortable is really cool. So thank you guys,
and thank you for providing that place for people to come. Nicky hosts something called the Death Cafe, which is an incredible. When I first heard about it, I just so what it is people. It happens before they can come before their person passes.
Anytime.
With that anticipatory grief, and they get to share their stories with other people going through similar situations, and it creates this sense of community. And it doesn't stop there. It's while the person is dying and after the person has died that they can get together and openly discuss things and
have support.
Be supported while they openly grieve their loved one. And you know, there's lots of tears, there's lots of happy tears, there's laughter, and there's
hugs.
It's just this love-filled space that is so rare, and I can't understand why this is not commonplace. It's phenomenal. Like,
thank you.
Massive kudos
Thank
to you.
I mean, the Death Cafe did start 35 years ago in England. John Underwood started it. So thinking back 35 years ago, bloody hell, he would have had a bit
space.
of right. But there is this need to talk after a death, after a breakup of a marriage, after your kids have left the home, right? Like empty nesters, there's grief. If you've lost a job that you've been in for 40 years, it's grief, right? So I think that's being recognised more and more in the last few years, that grief isn't just about somebody dying. There's lots of different types of grief, and it can compound, right, into complicated grief when there is an actual death. So to have a space where it's not a counsellor sitting there telling you should be doing this and try this and do this and and it's been 3 weeks and you should be getting on with it and back to work. It's not, because that's not how we as human beings work. We're emotional, and you and I would react differently, right? So to think that you've got 10 points that everybody should be doing, that's incorrect. So the death cafes have probably in the last couple of years started to really evolve. And I'd always, when I look back in my diary, for the last 5 years, I've been wanting to do it, right? Death cafe. So I knew that there was a space that was lacking, and funeral homes, whether they're multinational corporates or even independents, they all offer aftercare grief service, right? On their websites, religiously, it's their aftercare. What is that aftercare look like?
Not much.
Right? So that's where I wanted to be different and actually provide that aftercare and a space, and that comes in the form of the Death Cafe, right? So I've kind of hooked onto John Underwood's belief, and I follow their non-profit protocols. It isn't a counselling session. It's a group-directed discussion, and I provide, we have tea and coffee and cake and all of that fabulous stuff, and there's no cost. No one of any religion can come and attend, and at any journey, at any time in their journey, whether it's before, during, or after. You might come in as a stranger and not know anyone, but you'll leave
as family.
You'll leave as family, right? And if I've looked after your loved one prior and done the service, then there's no explanation. I've walked that with you, right? So and what that enables me to do is, if you're a little bit shy in speaking, I can gently extract and bring you into the conversation, and like you rightly said, there is a lot of tears. And there's phenomenal amount of laughter, right? So it's not all doom and gloom, and we're not all just sitting there in hoods and sobbing. It's not like that. There is huge healing in laughter, and you can laugh at yourself. This is what I did. I sat on the couch for 4 days, and in my daggy tracky pants, hadn't washed my hair, brushed my teeth before, because that was I just needed to do that.
Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And then someone else will say, oh, my God, that's what I did too, right? Like, yeah.
And then you start to feel human about it.
Exactly, right? And laugh about it and go, the postman came and I'm still looking like this 3 days later, whatever. And to normalise it.
Yeah.
Right? Just to normalise whatever it is that you're feeling is validated, and it's normal and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because it will be better. Right? It'll never be the same. It can't possibly be the same, because that person isn't there anymore.
Yep.
Can't be the same. There's different ways of remembering them, of rituals, in making sure that they're included in their life, or having, that space where you can say their name and not be frowned upon. Right? It's just,
because so many people will tiptoe around the
100%.
whole subject, and that poor person is just like, just say the person's name.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Recognise that. Mourning clothing, the black armband.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would love to see that introduced again. It just signifies I'm fragile. Just be gentle with me.
Yeah.
I've lost someone, and if that was the case, I can guarantee you there'd be more black armbands worn than not, right? And that in itself is the shared collective, where people would look around and go, oh, my God, they're in grief. They've lost someone. Let's just be kinder. There's nothing wrong with being kind. And that's all this is.
Particularly,
just kindness.
Like, imagine being in a workplace or a school, where, like, a big corporation where there's a whole floor of desks. You've got people around you trying to do your best to meet a deadline. Your boss is coming down on you because they haven't got a clue. But something as simple as an armband could be all it takes to back off a bit.
100%.
Yeah.
Why
aren't we doing this? I
know, right? Like, it's just, why aren't we being kind enough anyway? But that's just a visual reminder of, wait, hang on, that's super powerful. There's grief, because there's an automatic shift. When you talk, oh, hang on, they shift. But it's only for a very small period of time. A week later, they're like, oh, why aren't you normal again?
Yeah.
Like, why are you still crying? And that's the hard thing. It's not just leading up to a funeral. It's the after the funeral. When, people go back to work, and, the hot meals stop coming, and the flowers stop coming, the phone stops ringing, and the texts stop. It's that silence after that it really hits, and that's when people need support.
Yeah, because that person's trying to create their new normal with this big void in their life. What sort of advice can you give a person that's trying to find their way in that space? Like, how, you don't want to rush them, obviously.
No.
But how can they work out who they are now? Particularly, let's say for a widow whose children have grown up, and it's just her and her husband, and then husband leaves.
There are no real right words to say to somebody, right? It's a process, and being there and having people there just to listen. Sometimes they'll repeat things over because you're trying to make sense. And then a lot of the what ifs come into it. If I'd taken them to the doctor, if I'd done like those things. And it's not about even saying or doing anything. It's just listening, because that's got to come out.
Yep.
Okay. All of that processing now, and I call it grief brain. You've got grief brain.
And that clouds everything else, hey, yeah.
Nothing is sticking. Nothing makes sense. It's this fog. You just don't even know if you've eaten. You're just going through.
All the days roll into one.
Right?
Yeah.
It's automatic pilot. You're just kind of doing stuff. And, if you've gotten up and put clothes on that day, that's all you need to do.
Yep.
Right? That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? If you haven't done, you're winning. Yep. That's exactly right. a lot of people want to come up with those euphemisms of, oh, he's in a better place, or, you know, blah, 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 and you just stop. Because when I had that said to me, it's like, well, this is his better place next to me, like with me, you know.
How can any place be better than that?
Right? So it's well-meaning, but it doesn't mean anything, and it makes you angry instead, right? So people feel awkward, and again, that language about death and dying, and talk about it as death and dying, right? The language needs to be very clear, not passed away or you're... When my dad was in ICU, and this is why I'm a bit more passionate about the language of things, and it was during the COVID period, you know, and the doctor had his thing on, and he was trying to explain to my father that he was dying. But we're both sitting there, and he's taking this long route of whatever he was trying to say, the scenic route, and I'm just like, what are you, you know, what are you saying? Like, what? Just get to the point. I don't, you know, my dad's looking at me, I'm thinking, what the hell is it? What is he talking about? And then it suddenly dawned on me, oh shit, he's trying to tell you you're dying. And I literally just said that to my dad. What he's trying to say is that they can't do any more, Dad. You're dying. And my father just looked, he said, well, why the FNL couldn't he just say that? Exactly right, right? We could have just saved a lot, but it was very, okay, language, right? He's dying. He doesn't have time for you to just take the scenic route, right? But our medical staff aren't taught as well how to be to have those conversations and just say, listen, so I'm very sorry, but there's nothing more we can do. I'm afraid, you know, you are dying, and use that word.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I hadn't thought of this before.
Right?
It makes sense. Yeah.
My dad knew he was dying. He was a smart man. He knew.
I would want to know.
Exactly. I would want to know, as did Dad, so he could make adjustments and do things and finalise things, right? And we can make educated decisions.
Because you're not doing anyone any favours by putting off the inevitable and framing it in such a way where you think you'll be okay, but you're not.
Correct. Because, you know, you're robbing people of the opportunity then to come and spend that time while they, you know, your person is still cognitive, right? And they can have conversations. And you're coming to terms with that, and you're helping them, they're helping you, you know. My father taught me a lot in how to die, as did a few other people, and just how that space also needs to be changed. And language is part of that. Be very clear and concise, because, you know, especially our lovely old ones, they don't have time for BS bullshit. They want to get straight to the point, right? They literally don't have any time for you to be pussyfooting around, right? Their time is up.
What a valuable lesson.
Right? Yeah. So, which is why part of these conversations beforehand and having them with people is critical. So that you know how you want to die, the space you want to die into, right? Dad was very clear, and I did feel for a long time I failed him in that, because he did want to die at home. And part of that, not getting him home in time, was because some of these conversations lagged at the hospital, right? Which still pisses me off to this day. But had we known a little bit earlier, we could have made some decisions quickly and gotten him home. So we just eventually, you know, I said to Dad, you know, because he did ask, am I going home? And I said, you know what, Daddy, home is where we are. So yeah, he did die in the hospital, but we were all around him. So, you know, wasn't quite in his own bed, but we made it as comfortable and as homely as possible. And that included playing music and talking and having the grandkids there and laughter and the football, you know, making sure that I'd watch Manly and cheer for Manly when he's not here. So those things happen, and that was really important, right? But don't miss that opportunity, because you don't get a do-over. You just don't.
Something that you're very good at is, and I think this is probably due to your growing up and the fact that you have a very good understanding of what it's like to die. And that you're a very spiritual person, and you know you're so holistic in taking such a varied approach to things to make it really personal for that person, right? When you have that conversation with someone once they have been told that they're going to die, how do you bring it up with them to say, all right, we need to talk, we need to start planning? Like, if that person says, I'm not ready, what can you do to encourage them?
Yeah. So again, I use a lot of humor, and it's just who I am, right? And I use this, and I say it a lot because it bloody would happen if I didn't take control of it. And planning my own services and what I'm wearing and my own holding image, you know. And I said, God, if I left it up to my boys, I would be placed in a Bulldogies jersey. They would give me, you know, like, oh, here's a photo from mum in the 80s with a perm and blue eyeshadow. Make her look like that, right? Like, right? And people laugh, right? And now, so straight away, that just opens it up and go, okay, eases it, right? So what would you like to be? Right? Absolutely, you can have underwear, right? Some people, you know, can I put my bra, you know? I recently saw something where a woman had said, if I'm, you know, buried with my bra on, I will come back to haunt you. And I just thought, you know what, that's so true, because that's what the first thing we take up, right? Like sometimes.
As soon as you get home.
As soon as you get home. That. So can you imagine all eternity having your bra on? She was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. And so those are the kind of things we might talk about. And then suddenly it's just like, yeah, let's, you know, do this. Let's have a look at that. And
so not make it so serious, make it a bit, you know, we've got to do it. Let's just get this over and done with.
And if you can make that decision for your loved ones, these are all acts of love. They're just acts of love, right? And you're removing that from them because they're going to have to make some of those decisions. And it's very hard when they're in grief. You're now allowing them to grieve and mourn because you've made all the impossible, hard decisions already, right?
Yep.
So that just kind of
gives them space.
Absolutely. And I've sat in front of families that have had both. Somebody that's taken care of all of that, and they've been able to you know, grieve, spend that time really, you know, sitting with their not having to do stuff straight away, right? And then there's those that have no idea, never had a conversation, didn't, because, you know, no one was going to die, so let's not bring that up. And have no idea, you know, and there's arguments about what they're going to wear and what songs, and it's awful. So it's the aftermath. Yeah, it's great for you, you're gone, right? Dad's had said to me, and we had a lot of conversations because he knew, you know, that I was open to it, and it was a safe space. Another thing that, you know, the dying want to speak. They do want to speak, right? You just have to be ready to listen and be open to listen. And he'd said to me, you know, just put me in a cardboard coffin and put me out with the recycling. I said, okay, that's never going to happen. So, few reasons, but, you know, I said to him, Dad, I know you're trying to make it easy for me, but these are the last things I will ever get to do for you. There's going to be no more birthdays, no more Father's Days, no more Christmases. And if you think I'm putting you in a cardboard coffin, that ain't happening, right? That is just not happening. And he just said, yep, fair enough, mother bug, right? So that was cool, right? So I knew that I had full right. There was certain things. Yes, he had his manly scarf on and his socks, and, you know, there was things that he had said and wanted, and, you know, the flowers, the songs. Actually, on his 80th birthday, and we all walked in with cake and balloons and singing happy birthday, and he's just stop, Google, play my funeral song. And we're like, okay. And the cake's, you know, melting, the candles are melting, and we just had to wait and listen to this bloody song, right? Okay, which none of us really paid any attention to. And then when he died, we had to go back to bloody Google and find the song, right? But it was just one of those, it was a gift at the time. We laugh about it because it was just, he was always like, Google, tell me this, Google, tell me, and then there's this funeral song, right?
He sounds like such an incredible man.
Yeah. So, there was all these gifts even in that process that I just love, right? So I just don't want other people to miss out on that, because you can if you're not open to having them speak.
Yeah.
And shushing them down, so often it's like, no, don't talk about that, don't talk about it. You're not going to die. Don't be ridiculous. Well,
happens to all of us, doesn't it?
It's 100% accuracy. Right? It's one of those things, taxes and death.
It's not if but when.
Correct. And it's not just the elderly. There are young people that are dying.
Yeah.
And they need support and they need spaces. So, for them to be able to sit and talk to their parents is also huge. My son the youngest one lost a couple of mates a few years ago. And, I can't even begin to imagine how his mates' families dealt with it. Some of them were very closed off. These are young teenage boys
that haven't learnt to deal with their emotions yet, probably.
Right? Yeah. Or to speak about death, like they're teenagers. They live forever, right? So, and I know Deezy was instrumental in helping a lot of them because he's so, he's used to mum saying, "Take a nice photo. This is for her slideshow," right? So he's open to that and he's aware of death and how you're meant to manage and be kind, and sometimes you don't need to say anything. Just hug them, mate. Just hug them. Yeah.
I really love that nowadays we, when we're celebrating the life of someone that we've lost, we have so much choice these days. I remember hearing when I worked at the funeral home that the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you like. But I want to talk about the different types of funerals that people can have that are a bit outside the norm. But is there anything that, from a legal standpoint, you can't do? Like,
okay. Well, I guess the disposition probably would be one of them. You can't. You can bury it on your own property, but there are guidelines to that. So if you were going to bury someone, there are, so don't think if you're renting, you can just save some money and bury someone in the backyard. It doesn't work like that, but you can bury on private property, right?
So if someone had an old homestead that had been passed down through the generations.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
You can't be near waterways and things like that, but if you've got, sufficient land, you could absolutely bury your person there, right?
Okay.
There isn't really a whole heap of stuff that you can't do. And I guess it depends on the family, right, and who the deceased is, and honouring their life and wishes as well. So you're not going to bombard the family with everything. Here are 100 decisions, right?
Yeah.
You have to be, read the room. And then you get a sense, it's through talking, you get a sense of that person. And, finance is a huge thing too, right? No one wants to talk about the money side of it. It can cost, significantly if you don't do your research, right? So, but look, you can have your ashes put up into, fireworks. You can have them put into paintings. You don't have to have a funeral at a church or a chapel. You can have it at home. You can have it in a park. You can have it in a beach. You can do, the service can be held anywhere.
Do you need council permission to have it at a park?
Depending upon what it is, if you're going to have the body there or not,
like if it's just a memorial, I suppose it'd be fine.
That would be fine.
But
if just to let them know that this is what's happening. So, if there's lifesavers doing any sort of, training, you're not.
Yeah, right.
Just make sure that space is sacred enough for what we're doing, right?
If someone was to be buried in a cemetery, So this is what I would like when I go, right?
Okay.
I want to be buried, and I'm a huge animal person. I love animals so much.
Yep.
So it would mean the world to me if people could bring their pets
Oh my
to
God.
the ceremony.
Yeah.
But would the cemetery prevent the animals from being there at the service?
No.
Cool.
No. Potentially in the chat, depending, but again, I've had, animals at services.
Yep.
Because I'm a huge animal lover as well. And particularly if the deceased had a fur baby, always saying, please bring them, because our fur animals, our fur babes,
they need to say goodbye too.
They grieve,
yeah,
mate. They grieve unbelievably, and they need to say their farewells too.
Okay,
so
cool.
Make sure you write it down though, so everyone knows.
Yeah.
And your wishes, that's the other thing. Make sure that they're left with somebody that is going to execute your wishes accordingly. Don't just, make sure that person is trustworthy, that's going to really go, no, hang on, and this is what's happening, and legally give them the power to do that. So, make sure you know about your enduring guardianship, which ends when the person dies, and who's going to be executor of the estate, who's the legal next of kin, all of that. That's super important for any single living person to make sure they're sorted out.
Can a funeral director help with that, or do they need to see a lawyer?
A lawyer would, or a solicitor. You can have it written down, or I can help. There's paperwork. A funeral director can give them paperwork to explain the the different roles. You can fill that out, and you make sure the doctor has a copy.
Okay.
Someone legally has a copy. If you've got a solicitor, absolutely, they have a copy. That and a will would be great. You don't have to go into great detail, but just legally, who's going to be responsible for your body after you die, and looking after the funeral arrangements and your finances, right? And then if it's a different person that's going to look after your well-being when you're alive, to make those medical decisions as well, you can have that as well. It can be the same person, different person. But yeah, just being aware of that is hugely important.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now I want to move into the more paranormal side of things. Have you ever had a paranormal experience during a funeral?
Oh, good question. A few.
Yeah?
A few.
Are there any that you can talk about?
Yeah,
with respect
okay.
to the family,
absolutely.
Of course. I would never ask you to talk about this.
No. So many years ago, it was a fairly young gentleman that died, and the family, when they brought the clothing, didn't have shoes, right, for him. So I'm a Pisces. Pisces rules the feet. It's all about the shoes for us. So anyway, and I just remember at that time just kind of being, okay, that was a bit odd. I felt odd for him because, his outfit, it was all, happening. And I just thought, how do you not have shoes on this? I just felt bad. That night we were, I was in bed, and we heard down the side of the house these dress shoe footsteps, right? Like they were dress shoe footsteps down the side of the house. And I immediately thought of this gentleman. I'm thinking, okay, it's about the shoes, right? Because it was on my mind, and I, woke Craig, and he could hear it. We went out, had a look. There was no one. Clearly there was no one there, but it was just the shoe thing. So I made a point of trying to say to them, can we just the shoes? Can we do the shoes? And they were quite adamant, no, he didn't need shoes, right? Which made me feel, I don't know, I just thought, I think he's trying to tell you to put shoes on. But, you can't tell them that he came the night before, right? But funnily enough, on the day of the service, and I kept getting this shoe thing the whole time. And I'm like, I can't, what am I going to do? It's not my responsibility. And his best mate turned up with a pair of these dress shoes, right? And he said, can they go in with him? And of course Craig was doing the cremation, so we made sure that
Nicky's husband.
Yeah. made sure that the shoes, you know, so there's that kind of thing that happens beforehand and you're making sure right at the end. And so it was just, no one else needed to know, but he got his shoes, which I thought was really cool.
Nice.
Right, which was nice, right? But as far as at the actual service, there's always things like the drafts or the whisperings, or you'll see movement, or, you know, there's a sense you can feel them around. And it's interesting, people that they don't even know me personally, but they will open up about that stuff straight away and ask straight away, you know, do you believe? I go, no, I don't believe, love, I know. Absolutely, you know. I felt something on my shoulder. Was that much? Absolutely. Absolutely, you know. So because they are there, they're with us, you know, and there's sometimes you can really, really sense it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, you can see it in the people, or there's just little things that happen, or, you know, even if it's a gust of wind at just this time, and you just go, what? You know, I've had butterflies nearly land on my shoulder once, right? It was on
and
you
the
just
birds,
think,
why the birds? I always get the birds.
Right, yeah, right. And you just, there's magic. There's magic afoot.
Yeah. I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah,
just
I know,
thinking of
right?
this
Yeah,
now.
I know.
I did a funeral one time at Lura, and this, I remember preparing this person in the mortuary, and I just had some sort of connection with them, right? I felt like they were still here.
Yep.
And you know, when I'm preparing a body, I'll talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just normal, and you know, and one of the things I really loved about my job was the privilege of being the very last person to care for this person on
100%.
earth. And I would turn it into a mini day spa, right? Especially for the little old ladies that come in. I'd do their hair, I'd do their makeup, I'd just spoil them so much. It was such an honour. So this particular person, I went to town in the mortuary. I made them feel really special. And on their big day, I remember it must have been autumn, because the leaves were starting to drop on all the trees that were around. These particular trees near the chapel have flowers on them. And it was a still day, still as. We begin the service, and when they start doing the eulogies and the photo slide, that's our moment as a funeral director to step back and observe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was I think I was outside the chapel at that point, and I've looked around, and from a dead still day, the wind picks up and you feel the energy building.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it was magical. The wind picked up so much that the leaves sort of all came up and swirled around, and the petals off the trees. And it was just like this whirlwind that we were in of leaves and flowers. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And I wish we got it on video. And I've got goosebumps talking about it. And I was just like, holy shit.
Yep.
And I remember people watching the slideshow and them looking outside and being like,
what? Yeah.
See this?
Wow.
Like, what? And for me, that was just like, fuck, this person is incredible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's probably my most memorable experience at a funeral.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's I know. You're right, goosebumps.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Just
and for caring for them, because even though the body may not be without life,
their souls,
it's not without meaning. Right? Like, it's still your person.
Yeah.
You still
Why
care
should
for them.
care stop when they stop breathing?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, well done you. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
last little bit that I want to have a chat about,
Sure.
just briefly, because it fascinated me when I heard. You probably know what's coming. Was I think you said 16 years ago.
This year? Yep.
Yep. Nicky had a near-death experience. She was gone for 20 minutes. Her husband saw the accident. It was a hit and run.
Yep. He was also hit, but not as severely as me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, he was hit. Luckily, he was pushed out of the way, but I was left on the road and was run back over. So it was twice for me. Yeah. Yep.
So when you say to people, you know, do you believe in this? And you go, I don't believe I know.
Yeah.
You're literally speaking from experience because you've been to the other side.
Correct.
Can you?
But you know what? We've all been to the other side.
Well, yes,
right?
sorry. Yes, we have.
You just don't remember.
But during this lifetime.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And then, well, coming back. And that was the other thing. Yeah, coming back.
Yeah.
And so it took a long while to kind of work that out. And that's why I'm so passionate about people speaking when the dying do want to speak.
Yep.
I bloody know that, right? I know that firsthand. And yes, it was ridiculous things in my mind. Diesel was only a baby at the time, so for me it was really important how his bottle got warmed up, you know, when Rocco was having his excursion and the money was there, and just all these things, mum things, right?
Because people were trying to shush Nicky when she was in this terrible state immediately after.
Yeah.
And Nicky's like, just let me speak.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Let me just, and so it was just all this stuff.
Like gibberish just coming out.
And it was like, no, don't talk.
Yeah.
I mean, even to the point where I was like, when my brother gets here, I'm the same blood type as him because we have a rare blood type. So if I need a transfusion, get him, right? Like it's just how I would remember. Anyway, weird. But as soon as I had gotten all these things off my chest, I popped out. I left. Gone.
Right, so you didn't die instantly. This all happened.
Yeah.
Oh.
So and then I left. Yeah, so I was still on the road when I.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was, you know, I was still conscious for a while, and then after all of that, you know, and then because I could hear them say, you know, we're losing her, and then Craig he was there physically. He'd made his way to me, but and then I left.
So tell me what happens when you leave. What do you remember?
So instant, no pain. Instant out of pain. And I, going back to that bra thing again, it was like taking that bra off. I was able to, my spirit, my soul was able to poof out to, you know, its actual size and not be squished into a body. So I just felt this, you know, this you could breathe.
Like a release.
Yes.
Kind of? Yeah.
But I was still very much me. I wasn't anyone else. I was still very conscious. I still had I was all me, right? Still conscious. And I couldn't understand why no one could see me, you know, because I couldn't understand. And I did try to get Craig's attention, and he turned around, but I wasn't physically there. So he could sense me and he could feel me, but because I was trying to say, babe, I'm fine, I'm here. It's okay. It's like, I'm here. I'm still here.
Look at my.
Correct, right? I'm still here. And that was one thing I'm still here. Like, what? I'm still here. I couldn't understand. It was weird. And then I remember seeing, you know, my grandfather. And, you know, we always look up because that's where heaven's supposed to be. And it was like an up thing because I'm looking down at this scene of chaos, you know.
It
was an aerial view. And at one point I was right next to Craig, and then it was as soon as I thought I was there.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So if I thought Craig is there, and then
is liminal.
Correct.
Okay.
Checked on Diesel, and you know, because I just put him into his cot, and so
you could switch into the house and
correct.
wherever you like.
Yeah.
Right.
Just trying to get people's attention,
Well,
that
makes sense because when I'm doing paranormal investigations, they can always, like when you summon them, if it's a particular spirit that you
Mhm.
know, you can summon them and ask them, and they just poof, here I am.
Yep.
So that makes sense that you're able to
Move around.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember that whole thing about I'm still me and I'm still here, right? There was this very strong I'm here, but no one could acknowledge, right? And we see that in movies and stuff. I go, that's exactly right. You're there, like you're still you, but not a broken, decapitated view. Like you're whole. So yes, there was a tunnel for me, but it was lined with incredible tall conifer trees, like those Christmas trees, fairy lights, because I'm a big fairy light person. And my grandfather, so Dad's dad, was right there. And so when you're looking at that, I could see the light coming from behind him, but I couldn't see the actual pinpoint the source. He wouldn't let me see that.
Oh.
And we had a conversation, and I had a life review. So, like I said to you, no, Elvis didn't get there. I'm very disappointed. Rude. Had a life review. So I saw my life up until that point. I saw my life going forward when I wasn't going to be here, my children's lives. I saw all of, those things. And I was not, I didn't want to get back. I didn't want to come back, right? Because I remembered home. I remembered where we come from, right? And by that stage, it wasn't just my grandfather. There was a whole heap of other people that were gathering that I knew. Yeah, but I didn't, like they weren't, but I knew them.
They felt familiar?
Yeah, right. Okay. There was a lot of them. And
so maybe a soul tribe.
100%.
Yeah.
There would have been other people, but I just didn't, they weren't familiar, but I knew them. Like I felt comfortable. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't like, oh my God, who are they? It was like, oh, I'm here. I'm home.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to come back. I didn't, because I just said, look at that. I'm not going back into that, but I made a very, and I say this, I made a very conscious decision to come back. And as corny as it sounds, like I said to you, it's about love, right? So, and I hadn't finished what I was doing, right? When we incarnate, we have our exit points, right? At any given time, we can call up on our get out of jail card, right? This was one of mine. And so there was this a lot of this conversation about that and seeing everything. And when I looked back over my life, and it's interesting, it's not the stuff that you think, oh yeah, that's good. It was these random acts of kindness that was the most powerful stuff, right? It's the stuff that comes from here. Yeah, that was pretty powerful. Sorry, I said to you I wouldn't cry, but anyway, yeah, it was these. That's what was more important, right?
And so I guess that's why you're when you came back, you were very insistent that I need to be of service and do more of that stuff.
Yeah, and I didn't know what the hell that was. I had no idea how that looked, but it was this thing about being of service, right?
Yeah.
So there were lots of other things that were said, and a lot I remember, a lot I don't. And I'll remember when it's time to remember.
Has it come back to you in dribs and drabs?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which is, and you just go, oh, that's what you mean. Okay. Got ya.
Yeah.
And again, I knew that would happen, but at the time, it was so surreal, And then it was the decision about, coming back, and it was literally just the love. And before I knew it, I was again back in my body, and it hurt. It hurt a lot. So my femur was snapped out of my leg. This leg was way up over here. I'm all metal this side, right? This side, this shoulder was tucked underneath here. That's right. Yeah, I was a huge mess. But despite what doctors had said that I would never walk again, never wear high heels again, and all of these, I'm walking. I'm wearing high. Yeah, I know, right? Like high heels, walking and talking. So I knew that would happen. Yeah, it was, and you know what? It took me a good 3. I was homesick, and I know this sounds. So once the body started to heal, right, and I knew, and it only took one person to make a difference, right? So for me, it was my ortho surgeon, the most beautiful man that ever walked the face of this earth. Not the man that operated on me. What? He was brilliant. Walked, and he did. He walked into the room. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to walk." And Craig had brought me in my favourite pair of stiletto pointy toe shoes, which any ortho surgeon would hate. And I said, "I want to wear those." And he said, "All right, let's get her up." And I remember everyone looking around going, right, that was it. And I want to be home by the next full moon. And I was.
Whoa.
I was home by the next full moon. So, it was.
How do you go from being bedridden?
I was still in a wheelchair, and I had to learn how to walk again and write again. I had to learn all of that.
Month.
So I was allowed to go home, but I had the rehab to, so I wasn't quite, doing cartwheels, but I was allowed to, because I was in bed, right? They wouldn't let me out of bed. So I just said, no, I need to, and he just said, let's get her up.
Unreal.
I didn't walk out in those stilettos. I did have them with me, but that was my, that was the motivation of doing that. I had to have skin grafting done, and it was an incredible journey. But from that, we also started Whisper and took us off on another thing. And I look back on that time period, and as horrific as it was also one of the best things, I guess, that happened, because that I learnt so much. I was able to let go of a lot of things, understand the real importance of life. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Like tomorrow is just not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like in a blink of an eye. And when that happened, Craig was still recovering from a truck accident that he'd been in a couple of months before, and had huge head injuries, and, he didn't recognize anyone. So we were still in recovery from that when he was hit and I was hit by the car. So it was just this time frame of it was horrific. So understanding healing and having the support of each other as well, and just, and growing from that. And it seems like it was someone else's life. It's like the story. But the people I met, even in the hospital, we're still lifelong friends. I'm forever grateful for. And so I do know when I say that the dying want to talk, I know from experience the dying want to talk. And is there life after life? 100%. 100%. Whoever's there, however you perceive that, however your heaven, I mean, this is heaven here, really. Some people say it's hell. This is our heaven. Because when we go up there, that's what we want. We want to take our loved ones with us, right? But,
that makes sense.
You want to still hang around and check on them, because they're your people as well, right? So, it was a blessing. I'm remembering home, but I was homesick for a long time. I couldn't put my finger on it. And it was being homesick.
Yeah, right.
I just wanted to go home, because this life was really hard, up there, and I was great, and, everything was fine, and, it was, but I also knew that I wasn't alone, not physically, spiritually, and who stood beside me, even on the angelic realm, which I wasn't an angel. I have to say that to you. I wasn't. But apparently I come from the angelic realm, and so, Archangel Michael and I, we're pretty close, pretty tight.
Because what happened? What did people see?
So when the vehicle was coming over back out of the street. I felt it, but I thought maybe that was the excessive amount of drugs. You know, when you're trying to think about what's happened after, I felt being wrapped in wings, right? Like I felt being cocooned in wings. So the vehicle's coming back over the top of me, and people actually said that they saw it look like it lifted.
Did Craig see that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing that.
Like it looked like it lifted, so I didn't get the full brunt of it because, again, they didn't know how I had survived that. And this whole thing about the wings, goosebumps, I couldn't work that out, you know, and that's why I sort of prefixed it with I wasn't like an angel-y person. It wasn't like, ooh, this is what, it wasn't like that. What was that? In hospital, I would hear the rustling of wings. You know, I could hear it, and I'd see the curtain move from, you know, just think, oh my, it must be. Geez, they got me on some good stuff because I'm seeing bloody eight. Like, what is going on, right? Like, and I used to love Dan and Sam Winchester, right? So the angel in there, that's how I imagine my angel to look, you know, in the trench coat with a cigar and a hat. That was my angel. I'm thinking, where's this?
Actually, I think that they can take any form that we imagine them 100%. To, like how we interpret that. And I fully I'm getting confirmation that that's how yours looks.
Absolutely. I could smell it. I could smell the cigarette. I could, like, you know, you'd be like, what? You know, and I'd have glimpses of this stuff. I'm thinking, oh my God, like,
you got a cool angel there.
Yeah, right. Where my hospital room was, I had a private room at the PM. Out the window was Hope Street.
Oh.
And I just looked at that. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that was all, just looking out there and go, okay, we can, you know, okay. And then as things started to, you know, heal, and I was, you know, and I think I said this to you during my rehab, and it friggin' hurt. Like, it hurt, mate. It hurt. I bumped into a man coming from the other ward, the other side of the ward, and he had lost his leg. And I just thought, okay, at least I've got my bits to complain about, right? Like, but I didn't want to then also belittle my own grief.
Yep.
Right? That's
because damn, it was valid. Like,
but and I was angry. It was like, why me? I thought I was a good. Why me? And it's like, well, why not me? What makes me so like? Why not me?
But do you think that if that hadn't happened, I mean, you wouldn't be the same person you are 100%, today?
100%.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, it was fucked.
Yep.
Majorly fucked.
Yeah.
But you are now this beautiful, strong woman who is such an inspiration. You're so resilient. You live your life in service and have helped so many people, and will be helping even more people via the podcast that needs to hear your words.
Thank you.
Like, okay, we all want to be home. And I'm not taking away from that at all. But you've obviously come back because you've got unfinished business. Yep. So it's amazing that you've heard your calling and you're walking the path and doing the things you need to do, because there's obviously a reason you're here. Yeah. You know, you're so blessed.
Thank you.
It's so horrible that you went through that, but you are so blessed.
Yeah,
I'm so lucky to have you.
And I think that's partly just to listen to, sometimes you just have to surrender.
Yeah.
Right? And we look at the world and go, why do bad things happen to good people? Right? I believe and know that we also do our own life charts, right?
Yeah. Before we come before we reincarnate.
Before we come here.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things we have to learn or just finesse, right? Because to be a whole person, to know love, to know hate, you've got to experience it. right? To know resilience. And that's why I said, when I was saying about why me, why? Well, why not me? Why does it have to be you?
Mm-hmm.
Why not me? We're all going to go through. But then it's what you do with that.
Yeah.
That next thing.
That's what counts.
That's what counts.
Yep.
And whether that be surrendering and just going, you know what, God, creator, universe, goddess, you drive and I'm just going to be a passenger, right? And things just start to fall into, when you stop pushing like this and, and being the salmon and swimming upstream and just be the tuna and just go with everyone else,
it's a hard
right?
Lesson to learn though, hey?
Oh, mate, it's huge, and it's not something that just happens overnight. And even now, I still have to go. Okay, I'm just a passenger. Just take over.
Just the vessel.
Just take over.
I'm
just
the ship.
because we've got the ego to deal with, and and it's hard. We get stuck into this 3D stuff all the time, and it's hard to move away. But it is about learning. This is the greatest school that there is, and that's why we come, to make a difference. And how is that? It's just helping one person, like that doctor with me. It just took one person. And so for me, I wanted to be that one person, just here to be heard, right? Just, I got you, right? Just, it's okay. And I think that's, as simplistic as it is, that's what I'd like to do. That's why I went out and started my own business, just to feel, I didn't feel like, families were getting a full, they were just getting a one and done. Yeah. And then left to flounder after, and if they were to ring the FD, it's an inconvenience. So why are they ringing on? They're so needy, and,
shouldn't be that
there's
way.
no kindness after the effect. And if you can't talk to your funeral director who's held your hand through the most horrific time of your life,
they're not doing their job right.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, right. So in the event of hopefully changing things, and I know there's a lot of beautiful people doing some amazing work.
Not everyone
independently.
Yeah.
There are, and it's about leading a revolution, a change in this space, right?
Break the mold. This
is how we were back in the old days, and until the hospitals got involved, in the 60s, and it took birthing and death back into the hospital clinical system. There's this pull back out. It's got to be human. We are human. We're human first. We're not. It's not a transaction. Death is not a transaction. Your funeral service should not be treated like a transaction, and that it's done, paid, filed, next. That's not how it has to be. Should be.
And as we evolve, I think the funeral industry needs to step up and evolve with that.
Yeah. And see that terminology, industry, and I try and use the word profession. I move away from industry because, it is an industry.
Industry
it is very
transactional. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be part of that industry. I want a profession where we are professionals, and it's before, during, and after. And I think that's my little hashtag for your funeral director. It's before, during, and after. You're not a one and done with me. It's not, you can't never call, or that's it, and see you at the funeral, bye, and that's enjoy your life.
Have a nice life.
That's not, and ring me when the next one goes. That's not how it is. And I know that my kids wouldn't want that. I would hate for them to have that experience. Hate for that. And to be left floundering after, which is when you need the help.
Yep.
Right? And everyone's gone. And so, hopefully, this resonates with people.
And so for those that it does resonate with, where can they find you?
Everywhere. Everywhere. So your funeral director, I've got a website, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok a little bit, YouTube. It's just all the usual socials, and 24/7. My phone number's plastered on everything. I do some
of our older generation might not have socials, so can they? You've got a website that maybe a friend or family can help them access?
Which is just www.yourfuneraldirector.com.au. I have the Death Cafe once a month currently at Blacktown Tavern in the function room. And if there's any other places, and I think we were talking earlier, potentially here, where the podcast is done, which would be fantastic.
Anywhere that has a space that can accommodate a small group to meet and share stories. What areas? Western Sydney?
Yeah, look, anywhere. anywhere. The Blacktown Tavern, it's just because I'm located in Blacktown and it's kind of my local, and they were kind enough just to offer the space free of charge. But wherever you've got a space, fantastic, because people will come.
Yeah.
People want to come, they want to talk, they just want to, without judgment. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't matter about your religion. We provide the tea, coffee, cake, tissues, hugs, just and laughter, right? So, you just have to Google that as well, and that'll come up with all the details.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Thank you for joining us today, Nicky. Yeah. This has been an incredible journey you've taken us on.
Thank you.
And I just love your view on all the things. It's really refreshing to hear.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, guys. Honestly, it was an honour and a privilege, and good on you again for creating this space. I think we need something like this in Australia. We don't have that, even for those working in the profession, just to hear and go, oh, hang on, that someone like me, or just to reach out. So this is kind of like the Death Cafe for the professionals, which is great. Good on you. Well done. Thank you again. Thank you, guys.
Pleasure. Thanks.